My name is Mr. Scray. I like to chat about nerdy stuff, or stuff that interests me. So, thanks for coming to listen to my chat today. Today I kind of wanted to do a low-key defense of Ariel, Disney's Little Mermaid. To be fair, Ariel isn't my favorite Disney princess. That's Mulan, Tiana, and Cinderella, because I am not able to make up my mind. But, in all seriousness, I'd be lying if I said Ariel doesn't have a place in my heart. I know it sounds cheesy, but it's true. As a kid, I used to sleep with the VHS tape of The Little Mermaid. Remember those? Dang, I feel old now. And also at church, I tried to give a talk about The Little Mermaid. You can imagine how well that went over. Jesus Christ, the Holy Ghost, and Ariel. The three members of the Godhead. Forget God. Only Ariel. Ariel is God. Alright. But yeah, she's kind of got a place in my heart. So, when I saw some bad takes on her and some YouTube comments, I thought, you know what? Why not do a low-key defense of Ariel? I think we could all use a little fun right now, and that just seems fun to me. We just got done with 2020, and man, I want to talk about something fluffy and not super important. Sue me. I don't want to talk about stuff like that. So, let's go do this thing. Wait, I should put on a better outfit. Be right back.
1 hour later.
So, do I look hot in my fish dress? Alright, before we get started, I have a few things I want to say. One, I just grabbed some points off the internet and synthesized them. So, I'll just be going through them, and then at the end, I'll add whatever points I want to talk about. 2, I don't have an art degree or anything, or a writing degree, but even if I did, this is all still just my opinion. 3, I'm not making any moral judgments on anyone who makes comments like this. 4, if you're watching this, I'm just gonna assume you're already familiar with The Little Mermaid by Disney. Okay? Good. Now, let's do this thing. Sploosh. Okay. Point number 1. Ariel was a dumb teenager and annoying. Well, if Ariel hadn't been a dumb teenager, the movie wouldn't have happened. Ursula would still had all those mer people imprisoned as little kelp people. Snarking aside, I do agree that Ariel is a dumb teenager. However, I do think she has a lot of worthwhile qualities, like her sense of curiosity and exploration. She's just dynamic and vibrant to watch. Yeah, she's naive and makes mistakes like a lot of teenagers, but I think that makes her more human and a more interesting character. But I do get that people don't always like these kinds of characters and find them annoying. They're wrong, but they have the right to be wrong. Though I do admit Ariel totally deserves to be called out by her dad for missing the recital at the start of the movie. I mean, all these merfolks show up, and her sisters and Sebastian put a lot of time and work into this recital. But she doesn't show up? Not cool, man. Not cool at all. I was never good enough to be in school plays, but I would have been furious if the lead actor just forgot to show up, even if there was an understudy. Which there isn't in this case. So, frick you, Ariel. A small frick you, but a frick you nonetheless, Ariel. Okay, point number 2. King Triton was a reasonable father. Nope. This is wrong for so many reasons. King Triton was a bigot who considered all humans evil and savage, and his excuse for this belief was that they ate fish, which is total BS justification. Now, we aren't shown too much about the mer people, probably to make them feel more ethereal and magical and fairy tale-like and all that jazz. So I can buy that they don't eat fish. But you know who does eat fish? Other fish! And some crabs. Fine, since we aren't meant to think positively of sharks in the movie, maybe other fish that eat other fish aren't thought of positively either. But what about those dolphins King Triton rode in on? Or that octopus in Sebastian's band? I guess they are all just A-okay, but those gosh darn humans! We can either interpret King Triton as spouting baloney, or that these creatures just don't eat fish in this world, or King Triton is failing to articulate his true point. Personally, since the movie doesn't do much to validate King Triton's belief that all humans are evil, other than that French chef who comedically tries to kill Sebastian, I'm more on the side that Triton is full of it, personally. This is what this video is gonna be like, folks. Me overanalyzing. For fun. Get out while you still can. Okay. King Triton also, constantly berates humans to the point that Ariel feels the need to hide all her human stuff in her grotto for what is probably years. Then, when he finds out about it, he validates all her fears by blowing it all up. I wouldn't exactly call him a reasonable father figure. Side note, does anyone else think King Triton's bigotry feels more gay-coded than racial-coded? I mean, Ariel hears her dad badmouth a group of people that she feels more connected to than the people around her. And then he nearly disowns her for being drawn to them and loving one of them. Then she actively becomes or shows that she was always meant to be one of these people. I feel like that kind of works better for gay coding than racial coding, since white people can't really change their race, despite what some people may think. Also, Ariel's cave kind of acts like a giant closet, but I'm a straight white cat girl, so what do I know? Point number 3. As a teenager, Ariel was way too young to get married to a grown man and should have known better and should have happily returned home. Well, time to say something controversial that can be taken out of context and people would declare me a pedophile over, because that's just how the internet is. Okay, but seriously, I do try to err on the side of chronological and biological influences when deciding adulthood and when people should be able to marry, but there are some societal influences to be considered. I mean, the concept of a teenager is kind of a new concept, relatively speaking. That doesn't mean it's wrong, but I do think we shouldn't accept it as this concept that is just completely factual and has always been true at face value. And it's also worth considering that while the U.S. on average does consider 18 years to be the age of consent, and when you're an adult, but research has indicated that the brain may not be fully developed till 25. So our societal decisions on these matters isn't always in a line with biological or chronological influences. And different cultures have different ages of consent. Personally, I do try to take in multiple factors into account, but even then I still do agree with condemning, glorifying a 16-year-old getting married. even if other places do put the age of consent at 16. However, I don't like the victim-blaming way this is phrased. Ariel is a teenager and can't fully consent to being married. It should be the responsibility of the adults in her life to protect her. Also, Eric isn't given an age, if I remember. He could be 15 for all we know. Yes, he doesn't look like a 15-year-old or a teenager at all, but neither does Ariel. Also, her father's outbursts and continuous bigotry would make it hard for her to happily return home, even if her father did apologize to her. And lastly, I have to ask why we are blaming a character who has no agency rather than the real people who made the film. Now, that's kind of a fun question. Where do we draw the line between blaming the character and blaming the author? I think that might make a fun video. Though, I think it's a little too deep of a conversation for me. But, who knows? Okay, point number 4. Ariel abandoned her family and gave up her voice for a guy who doesn't even know she exists. While this is technically true, it's important to take context into account. We don't really know what her relationship with her sisters is like, but with her dad and her, it's not exactly the best relationship because, he emotionally traumatized her. And she was in an emotionally vulnerable state and desperate to get away when she made the decision to leave. So, I don't think this comment is entirely fair, you know? And while Eric was the focus of the contract, Ariel was always fascinated with the human world and looking for ways to explore it. Her crush on Eric might have passed if King Triton hadn't overreacted, or she might have just introduced herself to Eric as a mermaid, as she was planning on doing. Also, teenagers can do dumb things for their crushes. I think that makes her a bit more realistic, but I understand that it turns some people off. Heck, it might even turn some teenagers off. Point number 5. Ariel's declaration of, "But Daddy, I love him," was stupid when she just found out that Eric existed. Again, context. King Triton had just been condemning Ariel for saving Eric's life and was kind of dismantling all of her justification, ignoring the fact that Ariel should not need justification for saving a person. She was desperate for any defense when she said that. Though you could easily make the argument that it wasn't just her most desperate defense, that it was the most true statement she made. And, interpretation. Though I do agree that the movie clearly thinks Eric and Ariel are in love and have the most deep and epic romance, even though they barely know each other, because it kind of lets them get married at the end. But it's still worth noting that the line wasn't as shallow or as random as it sounds when taken out of context. Ariel runs away after a fight with her dad, then Daddy has to come along and fix her mistakes. Ariel is basically rewarded for being bratty. It's like the moral of the story is to be irresponsible and rebellious in order to get what you want. Ariel is being rewarded for being bratty, huh? I'm sorry, but a traumatized kid trying to escape is not being bratty. Don't forget, Ariel was also purposely manipulated by Ursula and her eels. If not for King Triton, Ariel would not have been so desperate to go to Ursula. So in a way, at the end, King Triton was fixing both their mistakes. By giving Ariel her legs, gosh, that sounds so weird. By giving Ariel legs, it shows that King Triton realizes he was wrong in both how he treated Ariel and in judging humanity. Also, can I just ask this question? How much punishment should Ariel even face? Seeing her father turned into a kelp creature, getting shot at by a literal monster and seeing the world as you know it nearly end, I feel like that should count as punishment enough, especially since she clearly expresses guilt for what she did before all things go wrong. Point number 7. King Triton wasn't wrong. Humans are dangerous, and he was just trying to protect Ariel because humans killed his wife, Queen Athena. He just overreacted when he confronted her. I mean, yes, humans are dangerous, but it's kind of dumb to hold a whole group accountable for the actions of a few. I mean, if you consider all Japanese people evil because one of them killed your spouse, you have my sympathy for your loss, but you're still kind of racist. And if King Triton had just urged Ariel to be careful, that would have been one thing. But he constantly throws insults at them and calls them savage. Also, I kind of question bringing Queen Athena into this from the prequels because, let's face it, Disney prequels and sequels have a weird spot in Disney canon. Like, they're kind of canon, but Disney will also throw them away at a drop of a hat, but try their best to preserve their OG animated movies because they're the best known. So, including that point just kind of feels weird, especially since in the OG Little Mermaid movie, King Triton's best justification is saying that they eat fish. So, yeah, I'm not totally on board with this point. Point number 8. It's annoying when Ariel claims that she's 16 and not a child anymore, and the movie does nothing to correct that. I mean, we technically don't know much about mermaid culture, so that maybe in mermaid culture, Ariel is considered an adult because she's 16. But in real life, I do actually kind of agree with this comment. But I don't think the point was necessarily that Ariel feels that she's not a child, but more that she doesn't want to be coddled and babied anymore. But then again, the movie does kind of let her get married and be an adult anyway, so maybe the people who made this movie actually do think 16 is the age of adulthood, which is a complicated feeling. Let's move on to the next question. Point number 9. Ariel doesn't change or learn anything. Ariel has no character growth, and Eric is as flat as Cinderella's prince. Okay. I don't think it's fair to say that Ariel hasn't learned anything by the end of the movie. She does apologize to her father. I mean, it goes by fast, but I think the apology is legitimate and that she did learn her lesson, because at the end of the film, she just sadly watches Eric on the beach. She isn't begging her father to change her back into a mermaid. She's accepting of it rather than whining. I personally interpret this to mean that she realized that her reckless behavior endangered others and that she has to accept the way things are. None of this is particularly focused on, so I do get why people interpret it differently. Besides, it's not Ariel's lesson that's important, but King Triton's. He's controlling of Ariel and bigoted towards humans. Throughout the movie, we see moments of him doubt the way he acts, like when he asks Sebastian if he was too hard on Ariel, or when he shows remorse after destroying Ariel's collection. Yet none of this causes him to apologize or change his actions. It's only when he's confronted with the consequences of his actions, namely his daughter running away, that he begins to understand that he was in the wrong, that he truly hurt Ariel deeply. Then at the end, he lets Ariel be with Eric because he realizes he was wrong about both of them. He doesn't gloat that he was right to control Ariel, or try to claim that he is somehow still right about humans being completely evil. Now, I personally think that makes sense. because the movie seems to realize that King Triton's lesson is more important than Ariel's. After all, one is the adult who traumatized the child, and the other is the traumatized teenager. And I think that focusing more on Tritons shows that one has more guilt. Now, I do think people who say that Ariel has no growth just wanted a more dynamic change in their main lead, like how Mulan changed in Disney's OG Mulan. It's weird that I have to clarify which Mulan I'm talking about now. But I do think it's a fair point, or a fair thing to want in a main lead, but not every story requires a character to change, and not every character needs to. After all, Uncle Iroh changed before the beginning of Avatar: The Last Airbender even started, and we all love him despite the fact he continues to remain the same throughout the whole show. And not even the main lead in a movie or a TV show necessarily has to change. Just look at Paddington from the Paddington series. He doesn't change, but instead he inspires those around him to change and be better. Also, I probably shouldn't do this since this video is mainly about Ariel, but I'm going to defend Eric a little bit. Cinderella's prince yawned and got a dance in the OG Disney Cinderella movie, I should say. But Eric could literally sneeze and he'd be more interesting than Cinderella's prince. Now, we don't know much about Eric, but I think he is still very interesting. I mean, just look at how he moves and the faces he makes. Even if he's not a deep character, he's still dynamic and charismatic. Point number 10. Ariel wasn't a good hero for Ursula to face off with, because Ariel's never a real threat. I hate to say it, but I actually agree with this one. Ariel and Ursula both fulfill their roles in the movie, but Ariel isn't really a particular threat to Ursula, and they're not particularly interesting when facing off against each other. Like, Ariel's only threatening to Ursula just because of how sincere she is in her pursuit of Eric in romance. If Ursula had been a bit more subtle, like killing off Eric instead of trying to marry him, she probably would have won. Because Ariel isn't a threat. She's just a naive teenager who wants to get with the boy she loves and explore the human world and get away from her father. Point number 11. Ariel says, "Daddy, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, I didn't know." But Ursula straight up told her that she would belong to her, and Ariel should have read the contract more thoroughly in the first place. Well, first off, people who heard the "I don't know" part, you have a great ear. Like, sincerely. I watched the movie and the volume of that line was very low compared to the sound effects, so good on you. Secondly, Ursula did say that Ariel would belong to her, but Ariel didn't know that Ursula would interfere with her pursuit of Eric, and that Ursula was trying to take over the ocean. So there is some plausible deniability on Ariel's part, though I'll admit that's probably a cheap shot. And I think when people say stuff like this, they mean Ariel should have known better, which is somewhat true, but remember, context is everything. Fine, it's like 80%, but the point still stands. Ariel signed the contract after her dad just traumatized her and validated all the fears she had. Yet, when Flotsam and Jetsam first propositioned for her, she originally said no. It's only when they purposely needle the pain she's just gone through that she even agrees to go with them in the first place. And Ursula continues the manipulation once she's arrived, by undercutting Ariel and all her reasons for staying, and pressuring Ariel and not giving her a chance to read the contract. I think it's also worth considering that Ariel might be thinking that if her dad was wrong about humans, that he might be wrong about Ursula. So logically, Ariel should have known better than to sign a contract with a known evil sea witch. But she was also an emotionally vulnerable teenager who was being manipulated. And once again, these comments come off as a little victim blaming. I'm not saying the person who wrote comments like this would look at a scared and emotionally manipulated teenager and blame them for their suffering. It's just the way it's phrased is a bit off-putting. Okay, off to the next point. Okay, point number 12. Ariel gives off a bad lesson. The movie says that it's okay to defy and disrespect your parents and run away. Better than okay, in fact, because it will get you what you want in the end. That could get kids killed. Personally, I think it's a bit okay with defying your bigoted parents. But I'll admit, I might just be a bit radical on that point. And I will agree that there is a bit of a romanticization of running away. But Ariel was justified in wanting to leave, as we've already established. Nor does Ariel get what she wants solely for these actions. I get kids might not grasp all the nuances and that there is responsibility in storytelling, but A, the movie makes it clear that Ariel's situation was bad and her impulsiveness does get her into trouble. B, I think it's a stretch in this comment at least, because you could say that kids might interpret Mulan as trying to justify running away, or that video games cause shootings. And C, this is a family movie. You should probably be watching this with your kids or the children in your life and explaining some of these nuances to them. But what do I know? I don't have kids. Point number 13. Ariel needed a better reason for wanting to run away. Maybe she could have been a social outcast. A better reason than just being traumatized by her father than being manipulated by an evil sea witch. K, Jan, K. Also, Ariel might have been a social outcast for all we know, because we never really see her interact with Mermaid Society. But she might have also been universally loved by Mermaid Society by that same note. Okay, point number 14. Ariel should have killed Ursula to show that she's grown. I kind of agree with this point. On one hand, I do think it would have been more satisfying to see Ariel kill Ursula, and it would have more actively shown Ariel taking responsibility for her mistakes. On the other hand, Ariel was already actively trying to help the situation, even if she didn't directly stab Ursula. And the fact that we, and when I say we, I do include myself in this group, the fact that we feel like a manipulated teenager needs to take full responsibility for being manipulated by killing another person is kind of gross and not a great instinct. On my third hand, yes, I have 3 hands, deal with it. Eric saving King Triton, Ariel, and the sea easily disproves King Triton's bigotry, which was kind of an important point. Point number 15. Ariel never shows any guilt or remorse for what she did. Except she did. She apologized to her father, then accepted the consequences of her own actions, as we've already established. I'll admit that the movie doesn't really dwell on it, so I guess not noticing that or not thinking that it has a big enough impact is kind of understandable. Point number 16. Why didn't Ariel just write Eric a letter since she could write? After all, she signed Ursula's contract. Maybe it was a magic pen. Maybe Ariel wrote in English but Eric couldn't. Maybe mer people are basically illiterate and only sign their names for important documents. the real reason doesn't actually matter. Yes, it's magic. I don't have to explain it. Can be a lazy excuse, but sometimes it's true. We don't need every element of a story to have a detailed backstory, especially when the story is focusing more on emotion and atmosphere than logic. Not every story is Lord of the Rings, and not every writer is Tolkien, though I wish I was. That man was a genius. Also, this point seems to be blaming or framing Ariel as an idiot character for what is essentially a stylistic choice in the movie, which I don't particularly agree with. Okay, next point. Oh, we're on my miscellaneous points. Great. Okay. One thing I wanted to talk about that I feel like people were dancing around but didn't quite express is that I think a lot of people feel like Eric and Ariel's love is shallow, which is something I actually do kind of agree with. I mean, even with all the extremes Eric and Ariel go to for each other, they don't really know each other, and I don't think can really feel a true and deep emotional bond. Or at least most of the time, true and deep emotional bonds take time. As a movie, The Little Mermaid does give more depth to its characters than previous Disney fairy tales, but it's still aiming for that magical fairy tale feel rather than pure logic. So I'm not too mad that its romance is a bit shallow. The couple is fun and cute, and I want them together. And personally, that's enough for me, even as I roll my eyes at how the movie acts like Eric and Ariel are the most important couple that's ever been. I mean, though to be fair, they did kind of bring the mer people and humans together, so I guess in that universe they are the most important couple ever. Though there is something I wish more people would talk about with the coupling of Eric and Ariel. King Triton constantly talks over Ariel and dismisses her and doesn't listen to what she says. Yet, Eric actively tries to understand and listen to Ariel even when she can't talk. Like, that is just cinematic perfection. A+ coupling. Okay, another one of my miscellaneous points is that even though Ariel's the main character, I kind of wish the other characters would get dragged more. Because, A, no character is above criticism. And, yeah, that's about it. It was fun to see how different people interpret the same movie differently. And, yeah, I'll admit I was overanalyzing, and I will admit that. But it's worth mentioning that I think The Little Mermaid as a movie is well crafted and worth engaging with and analyzing its text, creating theories about. Heck, I think it's even worth overanalyzing and nitpicking just for the fun of it sometimes. Though I'll admit, even that can be a bit overdone. And with that, I think we're done here, folks. Woo! That was a bit long, now wasn't it? Alright. How about you peeps do all the clickety-click things and let me know what you think? Should I do more of these kind of low-key defenses of Disney princesses? What should we chat about next time? How'd you like the editing style? I have lots of questions and I'm hoping for some feedback. So, thanks all of you for watching and have a great and safe rest of your night, or day, or afternoon, or evening. Bye now!